I was always the forgotten daughter. The shadow trailing behind Grace, the golden child. While she was praised for her beauty, charm, and expensive taste, I, Nora, was mocked, ridiculed, and told I'd never amount to anything. I wasn't college material, they said. When I begged for help to go to school, my father offered me a job waitressing at a diner instead. My mother simply sighed and said, "Not everyone is meant for big dreams." I still remember the day I left. Grace had made another snide comment about me, living off Grandpa's coattails, when he offered me a ride home from work. My parents laughed like it was a harmless joke, as always. But that night, something broke. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Their voices followed me, angry, dismissive, accusing, but I didn't turn back. I promised myself it would be the last time I ever set foot in their house. At the time, I was working at a small trading firm. It wasn't glamorous, but I was learning. I was putting in late hours, reading everything I could, grinding in silence. Then, one afternoon, I got a call that changed everything. "Nora, you're not going to believe this." My college roommate Lisa screamed with excitement. "Maxwell Investment Group, they're opening an office in your city. I already put in a good word for you." Maxwell was a giant in investment management. That night, I updated my resume. The next week, I prepped obsessively for the interview. They grilled me on everything: market trends, strategies, scenarios. But all those nights I stayed late researching, the sacrifices, the effort, I nailed it. A week later, I got the call. I was in. From day one, I threw myself into the work. I stayed late, picked up the toughest portfolios, and tackled projects no one else wanted. My first major assignment, a floundering tech portfolio. Within 1 quarter, I delivered a 40% return. People noticed. "This is exceptional work," my supervisor said during my 6-month review. That praise came with a bonus bigger than my entire previous salary. But it wasn't about the money. It was about proving something to myself. 2 years later, I walked into a luxury car dealership and bought their top model. No co-signer, no questions. I pulled up to my grandparents' home an hour later, a red bow on top. "Grandpa, it's yours," I said, tossing him the keys. A month later, I closed on a penthouse in the Heights. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, a view that made you feel like the city bowed to you. One morning, I stepped outside, coffee in hand, and heard a voice I hadn't expected. "Nora." It was Grace. She stood there in designer workout gear, eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," I replied calmly, pointing up. "Just bought the penthouse." Her mouth opened but no words came. For the first time, I saw it, envy in my perfect sister's eyes. A week later, I got a call. My parents. We hadn't spoken in years. "We're in the neighborhood," Mom said. "We'd love to stop by." Curious, I agreed. They walked in and couldn't hide their awe. Mom ran her fingers along the marble countertops. Dad stood stiffly, like a guest in a museum. "This is quite impressive," Mom said. "I'm doing well," I replied. Then came the pitch. "Grace is engaged to Thomas," Mom announced proudly. The engagement party was last month. I hadn't been invited, of course. The wedding's in 6 months. We offered to pay half the expenses, but the budget is $300,000. I nearly choked. "You need $150,000. "A loan," Dad said quickly. "We'll pay you back. We'll even get it notarized." Mom added, it would be humiliating if we backed out now. Thomas's family expects a certain standard. Like when I asked for college help. I interrupted. "When you told me I wasn't worth investing in. When Grandpa had to sell his land to help me. That's not fair," Mom started. "No, what's not fair is how you only remember I exist when you need something." I walked to the door and held it open. "I don't loan money on principle. That's a family tradition, remember." Her face turned red. "How dare you throw our words back at us? After everything you've done for me." I laughed bitterly. "Please leave." The next day, Grace called. "How can you be so selfish?" She snapped. "You're rich now. Why won't you help with my wedding?" I let her rant. "You weren't so generous when I visited your home and you all called me a beggar. When you mocked my job. When you shut me out for years. Suddenly, I'm family. We were just teasing. You're being ridiculous." "No, what's ridiculous is only being remembered when it's convenient. Ask our parents. They're your real family. That's how they made it seem." "You ungrateful witch," she screamed. "You think you're better than us." The call ended. I sat there, staring out my window, realizing her words didn't hurt anymore. They just sounded pathetic. That Sunday, I had dinner with my grandparents. They called us, Grandpa said. Asked for money. Let me guess, wedding. Your mother had the gall to suggest we sell something. She said, well, you sold land for Nora's college, didn't you? She wanted us to sell the car, Grandma added. The one I gave you. That's when I hung up, Grandpa said with a proud smirk. Told her we don't sell gifts from family who actually love us. A few weeks later, Grace showed up at my apartment again. Dressed to the nines, fake smile in place. We need to talk, she said, brushing past me. I didn't bother stopping her. She laid out the situation. Final wedding deposits were due. If my parents couldn't contribute, Thomas's family would be humiliated. We need to make a good impression, she begged. Please, you're my sister. You're not here for me, I said. You're here because you need money. Yes, but we're family. I opened the door. I don't care about your wedding. Or impressing Thomas's parents. And for the first time in my life, I'm at peace with that. You'll regret this. No, Grace, I won't. Days later, my college friend Sarah texted me. Your parents had to admit they couldn't pay their share. It was a disaster. At the country club, they tried to dodge the truth. But the wedding planner had started calling Thomas's family directly. The illusion shattered. The honeymoon was cancelled. The champagne downgraded. Flowers scaled back. Thomas's parents covered the costs but were not pleased. According to Sarah, Thomas's mom looked like she'd sucked a lemon the entire time. The wedding went ahead, smaller, colder. My grandparents received an invitation but declined. We spent the day having a backyard picnic instead. Later, I scrolled through wedding photos online. Grace in her gown, Thomas looking stiff, my parents trying to blend into a world they never belonged in. The photos reeked of forced smiles and desperation. Weeks passed. Sarah sent me occasional updates. Grace and Thomas moved into a house bought by his parents. My parents weren't exactly welcome at Sunday dinners. Apparently, they didn't fit the image. I haven't spoken to them since. And I don't think I ever will. But as I sit here now, wine in hand, the sun setting over the city from my penthouse window, I don't feel angry. I feel free. Some bridges should never be rebuilt. Some ashes are better left undisturbed.